Good morning. My name is John Reel. I'm with the Commission's Office of Energy Market Regulation East Division. Happy to welcome you to this technical conference to discuss transmission planning and cost management. Before we begin, I just want to outline some logistics for the tech conference. We're going to have 5 panels. There are 2 panels this morning, followed by a lunch break, and then 3 panels this afternoon. There will be short 5-minute breaks between panels for swapping out panelists, and a 15-minute break this afternoon. The conference is being webcast via the Commission's YouTube page, and it is being transcribed. Interested parties may view a recording of this conference on the Commission's YouTube page. Only commissioners, panelists, and a small group of Commission staff will have the ability to speak today. I'd also like to ask the panelists to keep your microphones off if you are not speaking. Please turn your microphone on before speaking by pressing the little gray button to the right of the microphone. A red light will indicate when your microphone is on. After you are done speaking, press the gray button again to turn it off, and the red light should go out. If another panelist makes a statement that you would wish to respond to, please turn your attempt card vertical. We will do our best to keep track of who requested to respond based on who turned their card up first, and so on. Finally, panelists in the audience, please put your phones on vibrate or silent. And then finally, for the commissioners, I will be timing based on the agreed upon logistics that you all spoke about. Orange means you got 2 minutes left. Pink means you're done. The purpose of this conference is to explore measures to ensure sufficient transparency into cost effectiveness of local and regional transmission planning decisions, including 1, the role of cost management measures in ensuring the cost effective identification of local transmission needs, for example, planning criteria, and solutions to address the identified local transmission and regional reliability related transmission needs. As well as cost considerations and the process through which transmission developers recover their costs to ensure just and reasonable rates. Additionally, this conference will also discuss potential approaches to providing enhanced cost management measures and greater transparency and oversight if needed to ensure just and reasonable transmission rates. We do not intend to discuss the specific details of any pending or contested proceedings before this commission, and we ask that participants refrain from such discussion. With those initial matters out of the way, I will now turn it over to Chairman Glick for his opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I want to start by thanking you and the team for putting together what I think is an excellent set of panels, and I think we're going to have a very interesting discussion today. And I also want to welcome everybody. This is our first time back of having a technical conference since COVID, and we're still getting some logistics down. But it's great to see everybody, and here, especially in the Kevin J. McIntyre Commission meeting room, and look forward to having many of these as we go forward. Not too many. Don't want to wear the staff too much. But. Today we're taking up a very important subject of transmission cost management and planning, and you know I think everyone recognizes that what's going on around the country. We're going to see a significant amount of additional transmission investment, and we know it's very important. A lot of policies that we talk about and debate here are very important towards that. One of the most important issues is how to make sure consumers get the best bang for their buck, and that's not just on the big, long-distance regional transmission plants, but also transmission resulting from local transmission planning as well. And we have a very interesting group of panelists here, the first panel, but all the panelists here today to talk about that. I'm really looking forward to hearing all of your thoughts. I was thinking last night, I put together a list of issues that I'm particularly very interested in, if I could just go through them very quickly. One of them, the first one is the criteria utilities use in local planning and whether there is sufficient transparency to the process employed, both inside RTOs, but also in the non-RTO regions of the country as well. Secondly, how the costs associated with new transmission projects are minimized, and whether alternatives such as the deployment of grid-enhancing technologies or bigger regional transmission projects, how they're evaluated and whether they're sufficiently evaluated. Third, whether stakeholders have the opportunity to meaningfully engage in the planning processes around the country, especially when it comes to monitoring the ongoing cost of the projects. Fourth, if similar challenges exist throughout the country, or whether there's some regions of the country where this is a bigger issue, a more significant issue than others. I think that's going to be an interesting subject to discuss as well today. And then finally, whether there should be an independent transmission monitor established in the regions around the country. I think those are quite a few issues. I'm sure we'll have others as well, but those are the ones I'm most interested in hearing about. I also want to commend Commissioner Clements and Commissioner Christie for really being the driving force behind putting this technical conference together. I think it's a very important subject as we examine a whole variety of transmission-related issues. This is just as important as any other one. And thank you for coming up with the idea. And I really look forward again to the discussion today. I wanted a couple housekeeping matters. First of all, we are going to, usually what we do is we have questions in order of seniority. We're going to mix it up a little bit, give everyone a fair chance to ask first and second, so their questions aren't already asked by the time they get around to it. So we're going to mix that up a bit today. Secondly, Commissioner Danley is actually going to be participating by phone, so he's available by phone. So we'll call on him when his time comes around to speak. And I was going to say Commissioner Christie, but he joined us. So I know there was train delay here today, but he joined us. So I'll avoid talking about that as well. But again, really looking forward to the discussion today, and thank you all really for the panelists for taking time out of your busy schedules for joining us today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Danley on the phone to see if he's got any opening statement.
Nothing to start with, just to say thank you to everybody who's participating.
There he is.
Oh, his picture, yeah, with the phone. That's pretty cool. Commissioner Clements.
Oh, thank you and good morning. Thanks, Chairman Gluck, for hosting this today, and to the staff we see around the table and those we don't, for the hard work that went into the technical conference. I'm glad Commissioner Christie made it. I had the pleasure of working with him in developing the idea for this conference, and we share a keen interest in some of the concerns the chairman has already laid out related to cost management and transmission planning. And I just want to give a shout out to my team, both to Miles Farmer, who helped develop this idea with Commissioner Christie's team, as well as Mary Yang, who's really put a lot of work into thinking about these issues and how to make today productive. So, we've all emphasized, or several of us have emphasized, that there is a real need to make a once-in-a-generation significant investment in transmission to modernize our transmission system, as well as, and as part of, ensuring reliable and affordable access to electricity. But already, as we start down this path, transmission bills have been increasing. The Edison Electric Institute has estimated there's been over $150 billion spent between 2014 and 2020 on transmission investment. This number is important because it reminds us that we're not talking about, this conversation is not about spending money on transmission or not spending money on transmission. This conversation is about whether there's a sufficient framework in place to ensure that this money is being spent on an optimal mix, or even a sufficiently optimal mix, of new transmission infrastructure, and whether it is being constructed as efficiently as possible. And as it relates to cost management, I'm concerned about two things. First, we need to ensure that the projects selected through local and regional transmission planning processes are optimized for cost efficiency. The lion's share of transmission investment in recent years have been local projects, reconstruction or maintenance of existing infrastructure, and regional reliability projects with very few investments justified for their multiple values and benefits at the regional level. Now, it's not for me to say that this investment has been unnecessary, but it is incumbent upon this commission to ask ourselves whether the processes to select the types of projects that get built are adequate, whether local and regional processes are appropriately coordinated to ensure that the most cost-effective solutions are being implemented. My second concern is that once transmission projects are chosen, we need to ensure that the entities developing them are cost-disciplined in how they spend customers' money. So stemming from those concerns, I want to think about a similarly set of issues that I hope you all will speak to today. First, we need to know what's going on out there on the both local and regional reliability planning from a cost management perspective. What level of review, if any, are states doing on local projects, and where are the gaps that remain? Are regional processes adequately transparent and designed in a way that is allowing customers and their representatives to meaningfully participate? And if not, why not? What are the differences, as the chairman mentioned, between RTO and non-RTO regions that lead to different outcomes, if any? And then second, we need to find solutions. It's a pretty simple order of events. Panelists have already provided really good, promising ideas in their pre-file comments, so thank you. Are there transparency reforms we can make that have real teeth or that actually give customers the tools they need to participate in planning processes? Are there specific changes we should be thinking about to FERC's formula rate recovery process, including procedural changes that could ensure that this complex set of costs are adequately reviewed and not excessive before they flow through to customers? Are there changes or additions that FERC can make to our current prudence standard? Are there mechanisms we can explore, such as an independent transmission monitor or another entity, that can increase transparency for customers, consolidate technical expertise into a single body, provide independent economic analyses? Maybe I haven't had enough coffee this morning. My words are all jumbled. And conduct analyses across different utilities to shed light on where costs are being properly and not being properly managed. And ITAM itself is not, it's not an end unto itself, right? It's a mechanism. It's one of several options we could think about to ensure that these functions are properly performed. So thank you very much for joining today, and I look forward to your suggestions.
Thanks, Commissioner Clements. Commissioner Christie.
Okay, now is my mic on? I got to check because at the last meeting I missed about. Okay, so it's on. All right, good. Well, I want to compliment Commissioner Clements, who pushed for this hearing on costs. It's extremely timely. She and I have been talking about this issue for a long time, and I'm glad we're having a technical conference on it. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for moving forward on it. Transmission costs are growing, and they've been growing for a long time. We're seeing it's this whole issue of retail, the costs that show up in people's bills is a huge issue. We know bills are skyrocketing, and the main reason they're skyrocketing most recently, of course, is because of the increase in the energy markets. Okay, and largely driven by the increasing price of gas. There are a lot of reasons for that, and we're not focusing on that today. But the cost of transmission, which is a big part of customers' bills, and it's a much bigger part of customers' bills today than it was 10 years ago, that's been going up steadily over the last decade. And so today's focus is where it is a good focus, and that's on the transmission component and why are those bills going up, and whether they're justified or whether they're not. And so let me just give you a number. Between 2012 and 2020, last numbers available, transmission rate base in this country more than doubled, much more than doubled. In fact, it's almost tripled. And this is coming from data that the largest utilities who file formula rates here at FERC, they do AIFs, and various regulatory trackers have been adding those numbers up, like S&P, and they have found that just for the utilities that are filing here for formula rates, that the increase in rate base has, again, in 8 years alone, has been well over double, almost triple. If you had the latest numbers, it'd probably be triple. Now, why is rate base a significant number? Because expenditures that go into rate base, assets that go into rate base, end up being charged to customers, and not only do the owners of the assets get dollar for dollar recovery on a with a depreciation schedule as well, but they get an ROE. And so when assets go into rate base, that is going to be a major driver of retail bills. And so rate base is more than doubled. So a couple of conclusions to draw from that. It doesn't mean that increase was not justified. It doesn't mean that every asset that was put into rate base wasn't needed. But what it does clearly indicate is the narrative that we see incessantly driven by special interest groups in the media that America is like starving investment in transmission is just not borne out by the numbers. I mean, you can't be doubling rate base, almost tripling rate base, and then have somebody say, well, we're starving investment in transmission. So the question is, are all those projects needed, and what vetting is taking place? And this is what's really important. And I hope we'll focus on that today. We need to be looking at both for regional and local projects. And Commissioner Clements is right, probably 80% of that is local. Certainly the RTOs is local, which doesn't mean that it wasn't justified or not justified. But who is looking? Who is scrutinizing transmission projects for both need and prudence of cost? Now, we know in a non-RTO state, it's the State Utility Commission, if it's allowed to, is looking at these projects. Hopefully they have the authority, and also looking at it through an IRP process. In the RTO states, of course, the RTO is the first line. because they're deciding whether to put it into a regional plan, if it's a regional project or even local projects. So the question becomes, okay, well, we need to look at the second line of scrutiny, which I think ought to always take place, and that is every transmission line, when they go into their state regulator for a CPCN, a Certificate of Public Need, a permit to build, what authority does that state have? Now, we know this varies. There are states in America, and I'm proud to say I come from one, where the state commission looks at everything. It looks at the route. It looks at the need. Even if it went into the RTO's plan, the state commission still looks at need. And every state commission ought to be looking at need, both regional and local projects. And they ought to be looking at the prudence of the cost. Is this cost justified? It shouldn't just, even in an RTO state, it shouldn't just be, well, the RTO put it in the plan, therefore let it go. The states need to be looking at these too and doing a strong level of scrutiny as to need, cost, and of course, obviously they're citing. And we know from that it varies across America. So one of the questions I'd like to have floated today and hear from people, we have Chairman Kent Chandler from Kentucky, who very knowledgeable. What are states doing, and whether FERC, in our role as the administrator of the formula rate process, can do something via that to ensure that projects that get formula rates have been thoroughly scrutinized at the state level, because some states they are, and some states they're not. And we need to be looking at that, because that's the last line of defense for the consumer on whether a project is needed or not needed, or whether it's the cost is prudent or not prudent. And again, I think in non-RTO states that's taking place. We need to also look at in RTO states, is it taking place? And if not, why not? And what can we infer? What role would we have in trying to make sure that is taking place there? So with that, very good topic, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to hearing from people.
Thanks, Commissioner Christie. Commissioner Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, everybody. Welcome to 888. It's good to be here. Good to see everybody. As we consider expansive transmission reforms amid this push that we're hearing about for even more expansive transmission build out, I think it's important that we make sure that we do it efficiently and cost effectively. And I think the point from my perspective of this hearing is that we're refocusing our efforts, at least for today, on what really matters, and that's the ratepayers, the customers, especially, in my opinion, those that have disproportionately high energy burdens. And to that point, I was looking at the NAACP NOPR comments recently, and I saw that they argued that if you put equity first in your consideration of new projects, that it can have cost savings in the long term, as well as avoid delays long term for particular projects. And the reason why that's important, and I'm going to quote from you from their NOPR comments right now. They say, low income and people of color communities are disproportionately saddled with complications from power outages and high or severe energy burdens, which are defined as paying more than 6 or 10% of income on energy bills, respectively. The average energy burden for low-income communities is 3 times higher than that of non-low-income households. Out of the 30.6 million households with energy burden, low-income residents make up nearly 70% with a high energy burden, and 60% have a severe high energy burden. Now, there are many reasons for this, of course, but I think the rising transmission costs play some role in that energy burden. And so I think it's important that we look at what opportunities there are for us to improve our processes. But with that in mind, I do want to say a word about, and I know many of you wrote about in your separate statements, our formula rate process. And so I took a look for myself at, well, what does FERC do when we review our processes? And so there are several steps. First, of course, when a formula rate is filed, staff does a formal review of that rate. And then subsequently, there's an informal process where periodically staff reviews annual updates. And there are informal communications that happen as a result of that. If there are any issues that are found, there could be an investigation or there could be a 206 proceeding to follow up on those findings. I raise those points only to say there are a lot of folks here at FERC who focus just on this issue. So I just want to acknowledge as we talk about changes and some changes that could be very necessary, that there are folks who spend a lot of time on this. And I appreciate them. We all appreciate them. But with that said, as a general matter, I'm looking for where we can improve our process again in targeted areas where we can improve our processes. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Commissioner Phillips. So, John, I think we're ready to get started.